Well, there's a major moment for health freedom in America happening where I happen to be right now, the great state of Idaho. And sitting on Idaho Governor Brad Little's desk right now, waiting to be signed, is one of the most sweeping medical freedom bills in the country, the Idaho Medical Freedom Act. And if signed, this legislation will prohibit nearly all medical mandates in the state, setting a precedent for other states to follow. And joining us are two of the driving forces behind this movement. First, Leslie Manookian, president of the Health Freedom Defense Fund, a group that successfully challenged the CDC's federal mask mandate and LAUSD's vaccine requirement. Leslie is the author of the Idaho Medical Freedom Act and has been on the front lines of the legal and legislative battle for bodily autonomy and medical choice. And joining her is Dr. Ryan Cole. He is a Mayo Clinic trained board certified pathologist. He has been on the front line of fighting all of the COVID mandates. He's suffered some personal and professional harm for being one of the real true fighters of the COVID era. He just has a ton of integrity. Excellent to have them both here. He's had over 1 million patient diagnoses under his belt. He's an excellent doctor. He's testified before Congress, the European Parliament, and more. So both of them have just been absolute fighters. And this conversation, this isn't just about Idaho. Just so happens the three of us are here, but this is really more than just this one state or this one bill. This is about the future of medical consent, state sovereignty, whether the government gets to decide what goes into your body. And this could definitely set a precedent to spread around the country, which is what we're hoping for. So Leslie, Dr. Cole, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Leslie, can you tell us more about this bill?
This bill is the Idaho Medical Freedom Act, and it's the first bill of its kind in the entire nation. And it would prohibit almost all medical mandates in the state of Idaho. There are a couple of carve-outs. One is for any kind of traditional occupational hazard. If you have to wear a mask because you work in a dusty place or something like that, or you work at Micron and you go into a clean room, then there's an exemption for that. And there it also is for businesses such as hospitals that take CMS funds, which are Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services funds, so federal funds. But aside from that, you cannot be excluded from a job. You cannot be excluded from going to the gym or the grocery store or an entertainment venue or anything on the basis of your personal and private medical choices once the governor signs this into law, which hopefully will happen this week.
What are Dr. Ryan Cole, can you tell us what some of the mandates are? There mandates right now in the state of Idaho that would prevent, or is this something that would solidify the fact that they cannot ever do anything?
It's to solidify that they can't do what happened over the last 5 years. And it is a modification of a bill that had been brought forward. And again, kudos to Leslie and all the work that she's put into this. It's been amazing, how she's fought for health freedom. And there currently aren't mandates in Idaho. That's the good news. There are still some colleges and medical schools around the country that are mandating certain procedures and injections and things of that sort. But here in Idaho, thankfully, we're in a good state, but preserving those freedoms is what's so critical, and making sure that we, going forward, value health freedom, medical freedom above all else, because if you don't have that, you don't have freedom.
Right. So this would would this be for anything and everything, or is this just COVID? Like, what exactly does this cover?
So let me just say, your viewers may remember that I made a documentary film on vaccines called The Greater Good many years ago, and I've been involved in health freedom for over 20 years. And I started Health Freedom Defense Fund in 2020 to push back against the mandates that I knew were coming down the pike in 2020, just because I'd been paying attention to all of the different legislation they'd put in place, like the PrEP Act and the Patriot Act and all these things over the past 20 years. And so what really precipitated this was this ridiculously absurd and overbearing response to COVID. And it's interesting because I presented the bill in the committee, and one of the committee members in I believe it was the House Health and Welfare Committee said, well, why do we need this now? Like, why are you doing this? I mean, why do we need this? And I said, because the time is ripe. It's fresh in all of our minds, and this must never happen again. And also sitting in the room, Kim, is a guy named Doug Cameron, who's a family friend of mine. And he is someone who was pushed, literally coerced by his boss, who has now died, who was afraid of cancer and therefore coerced Doug to get the COVID shot. And Doug is now paralyzed and will be paralyzed from the diaphragm down for the rest of his life. And so I just didn't ever want this to happen again. And so I took it upon myself to start drafting a bill, and I connected with some legislators in the state of Idaho, in particular, Senator Dan Foreman, and he was extremely excited about the idea. He said, draft the bill, and if I like it, I will run with it. And I drafted it, and he thought it was fantastic. And so he took it and ran with it. And it's just to ensure that this never happens again, that no Idahoan is discriminated upon or forced to do something against their conscience just to live a normal life.
So this is sitting on the governor's desk now.
It should have been sent over this morning. You can't tell because the bill page is only updated at the end of every day. But I can tell you that on Friday, every single administrative hurdle that had to be completed before it goes to the governor's desk had happened. And so I believe it was sent over there this morning.
What was the vote like in the chambers?
In the House, let's see, in the Senate, it was about 18 or 19 to 13, I think, 14, something like that. And in the House, it was 47 to 23. So we have a supermajority in the House, but not in the Senate. But I have news. Something happened this morning, which is very interesting. So, there's been all this talk about doing a constitutional convention in order to change the Constitution potentially. And a lot of governors are pushing for a single issue constitutional convention in order to require the federal government to have a balanced budget. So Governor Ron DeSantis had been scheduled to come here for quite a while to talk about that. Well, the Idaho legislature killed the idea of a constitutional convention, I think last week or the week before. But Governor DeSantis still came. And this morning, he met with the legislature and Governor Little. And during the meetings, he actually said, I hear Idaho is doing such great things, like the passing of the Medical Freedom Act. He mentioned it right there with Little. And I wonder what was happening. So I am hoping and praying that he will sign the legislation, or at the very least do nothing, because if he does nothing, then it becomes law automatically in Idaho after 5 days.
Wow. Okay. So it doesn't luckily default, because that seems like that would be such an easy way for a governor to not have to, to just, oh, well, I don't really like this, but I don't want people to know I don't like it, so I'm just not going to sign it. And then it just goes away. But you're saying instead, if he just doesn't sign it and he ignores it, it actually becomes law.
Exactly. So basically,
Wow.
He has 3 options in 5 days. He can veto it, he can sign it, or he can do nothing, in which case it becomes law. So
Okay.
he has to actually veto it to stop it at this point. And
the expiration is what, midnight tonight, or?
Well, I think it's 5 days from when it hits his desk. And I don't know, did it hit his desk at 10 o'clock or noon? I think it's 5 days exactly, excluding Sundays. But basically, it will be by the end of this week or Saturday at the latest for him to veto it if he wants to stop it. And Ryan has huge news, which I'll pass over to him, but
Okay.
it's an election year next year for the governor.
Oh,
He's running for re-election next year.
what's the big news?
Well, the big news, and Leslie and I have talked about this, and a lot of folks in Idaho have, and many people know my voice around the world. And those who don't stand up for the freedom of the individual are the problem that we've had, I think, for many years now, and not just with the COVID issue, but for many other issues. We seem to have government for the corporation, of the corporation, by the corporation, instead of and for and by the people. And so if he doesn't sign it and it becomes law, great. I'm glad it becomes law, and it's a wonderful bill. But it will also tell us by default where he stands on the freedom of the individual.
Mm-hmm.
If he does it, I think that'll be very telling as to where he stands for individual rights. So I think we need more people that will stand up and, even with reticence, enter the political sphere. I'm not very much of a political animal, but, I value freedom over anything. I wore the uniform many decades ago. Proud patriot American, and I'm willing to put my ring in the hat to primary the governor if he doesn't do the right thing in this case and stand up for the individual's freedom.
Wow. Okay. I look forward to voting for you.
Yeah,
That's
look at what he has done in the last 5 years to demonstrate his commitment to the truth, to freedom, and to actually sacrificing himself in pursuit of those
yeah.
ideals. I can't think of someone who would be a better governor of the state of Idaho, and I think that he would have huge support amongst the average Idahoan.
So Dr. Ryan Cole, you've had a lot of since COVID. I mean, you dealt with a ton of pushback and threats to your business, to your career. What has been? I mean, it's been 5 years now. I think to the day. Was it like yesterday? It was 5 years to the day when they started the shutdowns across the country. Because I remember I'm turning 45 on Friday, and I remember my 40th birthday got completely, I ended up live streaming. It ended up being great. I had a lot of people show up to my birthday via the live stream because we were all in lockdown together. But it's been 5 years. So how is your career now and your path now? Have you been able to recover from all of the attacks against you?
Uh, short answer is no. I've lost my business. I'm still under attack by corrupt medical boards and all over free speech issues. I mean, there's no patient harm complaints. It's all, we don't like what you said and you said it incorrectly, which makes it even more important for all individuals to stand up. The majority of people still are pretty quiet. They just want to brush it all, sweep it all under the rug and say, okay, yeah, that happened. But, with Leslie's bill, this is saying, okay, if it does happen, it's not going to happen here in Idaho. We're going to stand up for those individual rights. And those of us, like me, I'm not going to say, oh, woe is me. I'm a resilient human. But, I don't do on a daily basis what I loved for 3 decades. And that was because of corrupt hospital entities, backed by government entities, backed by, as we've uncovered with all the different funding of the organizations at the federal level, that were pushing narratives all over something that was basically a treatable disease the entire time. So it's not just about COVID. This is about bigger principles. Okay, so when one door closes, another one opens. So I think there's a lot of good things ahead. I'm not complaining about what I'm still going through. I'm grateful for the challenge. It's the refiner's fire. It makes us better. But at the same time, I don't want to see this ever happen to any other upstanding citizen or individual for doing the right thing the right way for the right reason.
What has been some of the pushback to this bill? So you say, Leslie, you mentioned that a certain, it seems like here in Idaho, what do we have? We have the House, in the Senate, right? I mean, is it the same? Or do they call it something different? The Assembly,
Senate and the House. Yeah, there's
so they do keep it the same. So in the Senate, it's a close. Why is it so close in Idaho between Democrats and Republicans in the Senate?
Well, it seems like it's close, but it's actually really shifting. And I think this is one of the big things that the political winds have really shifted in Idaho. If you look at our last election, which was just last fall, the Liberty Caucus, essentially, all of the people who would identify as Liberty people, picked up a ton of seats to the point where we almost have control of both chambers of the Idaho State Legislature. And I would predict that in 2026, in that election cycle, we will take over complete control. And so the Senate has always been a problem, but the Senate voted in favor. We thought that that's where we had the least chance of winning. And yet we prevailed. And in fact, we got out of committee 7-2.
Wow.
It wasn't as strong on the floor vote because there are still more people who are kind of beholden to the corporate world. But I think the governor has got to be assessing the shift in the political winds in the state of Idaho. And it's not the same. Last year, from what I understand, in the House, sort of liberty-oriented bills were passing 36 or 37 to, say, 34 or 33. This year, they're passing 42 to 28, or my bill, 47 to 23. So
I guess I'm just so surprised that the state of Idaho would be that close in the House and the Senate. I mean, this is a red state, and a lot of people flocked to Idaho. I got to be honest, since I've been here now for about 2 weeks, and I keep running into people, meeting people, and I keep they're like, oh, where are you from? And I keep wanting to give them the caveat of, well, I live in LA, but I'm from here. I'm from here. But then whenever I say that, all these people here are like, oh, I'm from California too. Everybody's from there. But they fled California because they wanted to come here where there was more freedom. So I'm surprised that, I'm just surprised that it was ever that close in this state. I mean, Idaho is the reddest state in the union, I think, actually.
But very much good old boys. So here's what's happened. So in the last 6-7 years, 80% of the newcomers, so the people who are fleeing all of these other states, 80% of them are coming here for freedom, for the vaccination laws, because they are the best vaccine laws in the nation. Mm-hmm. And they're coming to be able to be engaged and have an impact. And they are unbelievably engaged. So these are people who are moving here. They're running for office. They're running for school board. And I think this is why this is a new kind of calculus for the governor. From what I understand from my people, contacts that I have in Boise, the governor is frustrated that the kind of core moderate Republicans have abandoned him. And they're doing it because the political winds have shifted so much. They know they're not going to get reelected if they are not actually representing their constituents. And the constituents have become more focused, more liberty oriented. They do not want bills that are favorable to industry. This is why 3 times Bayer tried to introduce a pesticide, literally a liability shield last year. They tried 3 times, and 3 times it was shot down. Mm-hmm. And they're doing it again. And so my thing is, yes, it was in name very red, very Republican, but it was actually quite moderate in terms of who really controlled things. And there's something called the Idaho Association of Commerce and Industry that really pulls the strings of a lot of these people. And so from what I hear, Little's upset about that. But I think he's got to pay attention to what's happening politically and make the shift. And I think with Ryan throwing his hat in the ring, that's going to put some more pressure on him, know, and given what happened in the last election cycle, I mean, it was devastating for the old guard. And that's going to happen again next year, in my view.
So, Dr. Cole, are you going to run as a Republican if you throw your hat? Are you officially throwing it in, or are you just saying you will if you have to?
I will if I have to. And even at that, we'll see how things go. And we'll have some meetings behind the scenes this week with a couple of us, and we'll go from there. But to Leslie's great point, the individual is what matters over the corporation. We want good business in Idaho. This is a great business climate in this state. We want great employment. We have great employment in this state. We have low unemployment. We want to support those businesses, but at the end of the day, not to the detriment of the individual's rights. And that's why this bill is so important. We don't, and even from those moderates that Leslie mentioned, that some of the committee members' pushback was that they wanted to protect the business. And I thought, wait a minute, the founding principle of this nation is the individual and individual rights. And so certainly there's balance that needs to be struck, but not to the detriment of the rights of the individual. So yes, I'm putting it out there because I'm ready and willing. If he signs it, hey, great, maybe it takes a little pressure off me. But at the same time, I'm going to stay active and involved in the principles of freedom.
Kim, can I just say too that, these... It's what Ryan just mentioned is so important. They are literally saying that property rights trump individual rights. And my response to that is, what is more fundamental, more sacred, more treasured than the right to bodily autonomy? What is the number one property right that we have? Our own bodies. And if we don't have that, who cares if we have free speech? Who cares?
Right.
I mean, if you can force me to be injected just to live a normal life with something because of your fear or your wishes, then no one's free in this state. And that's why this bill is so incredibly important. And there's a representative named Lori McCann who lives up in northern Idaho, and she's a perfect example of these people, okay? She was saying that, the property rights of the business should trump, and that's all that matters. And she's worried that she'll get sued if she has someone on her ranch that comes and she asks them to paint and they won't wear a mask. She thinks she'll get sued for liability. And I'm like, what court would allow you to be sued if a person chose of their own accord to not wear a mask? But aside from the fact that we've already said that for occupational hazards that there's an exemption, my point is they're just clutching at straws because this is such common sense. I mean, who actually thinks that they know what's best for another human being, and who actually has to live with the consequences of another human being's choices? And so all of this kind of nonsense that we're getting out of representatives like Lori McCann, and there's another one, Rubel, and I think her name is Eggert. They were saying, well, what about super lice? Children could be bringing super lice to schools. This does not say anything about excluding someone who is obviously sick. It says that you can't dictate what medical interventions they use in order to address that. It puts the power back into the hands of the individual. And that's it. But they're trying to conflate it as something because I think they don't have anything else to go for. So they're just clutching at straws.
So just to understand this, if you, I understand there was a lot of problems with the PCR test, but let's just say if we were to have COVID again, or to reverse back and we had this bill, a business could exclude somebody who tested positive on the test, but they just can't force you to get a vaccine in order to handle like the pandemic or something. I mean, explain how that would work.
They can't force you to get the test even.
Yeah. They can't even
test.
They can't force the test, Kim.
Okay. So then because I think it would be fair for a business owner to say, I really don't want somebody with COVID to come in to my restaurant or whatever, I guess. See, this is where it gets a little tricky, right? Because I think you don't want, or what do you do in that situation?
Ryan, do you want to take that as a physician?
Yeah, they obviously have COVID. They're obviously sick. You're saying to them, I think you're sick. Take a test. They're like, no, I don't have to take a test. I want to come into your business. I don't want you to come into my business. You're going to get everybody sick because I can see you're sick. So what happens in that situation?
This goes back to common sense. With those individual rights, also as a good citizenry comes individual responsibility. I mean, how many times have we heard since we were kids and grandma and mom said, hey, you're sick, you're staying home.
Yeah.
And it's that same common sense construct. If we're going to have a good citizenry, we need to trust the individual to be responsible, to make good choices in terms of how they interact with their community. And, are there people that are on the fringes that are going to, be extreme? Sure. But the majority of people are going to be very commonsensical and are going to say, I'm sick. I'm not going to go out tonight to that restaurant. Oh, okay, let's celebrate your birthday a week later. I'm not feeling well.
Right.
And so I think this boils down to an education message. And we need to basically say, okay, look, this is circulating right now. If you have these symptoms, do the kind thing for your friend, your neighbor, your family, your community, your business. But let it be an individual responsibility and not a community mandate of any sort ever.
Yeah.
So
and you make a good point because that's the way it is for any other illness. I mean, COVID changed the way we think of things, but nobody goes around testing people for the flu or, or any other illness. Like we don't look at them and say, I think you might have something. And yeah, we expect people to just use good judgment.
I was going to say, how do you know that they have COVID? The test doesn't even work. We know that it is
right.
is riddled with a huge number of false positives, right? We know this for a fact. So one of the representatives said, what are you going to do if someone tries to come in with measles? And one of the other representatives, I think it was Cornell Razor, might have been him or Lucas Kaler, they said, since when do you actually evaluate whether or not someone has measles? And do you think you're capable as a business owner of diagnosing that? So if someone comes into your business and is obviously, very sick and coughing and whatever, you can ask them to leave. That's my point, is that this bill doesn't say that you can't send an obviously sick child home or ask someone who is obviously sick to leave your premises. You can. But the point is, you can't say you've got measles. And how could you possibly do that? That's practicing medicine without a license. And I don't know any business owner who can actually diagnose measles on the basis of someone coming in with a minor rash or something. Like, this is ridiculous. I mean, it's bordering on the absurd to actually have these representatives making these claims, or that these are the reasons that they are opposed to this bill, when this is just common sense. And I can't even believe that we have to have this conversation, right? That someone else gets to decide what's best for you. It's just lunacy, literally.
Yeah.
And I love that Leslie brought up that point, because I brought it up in the Health and Welfare Committee when we were testifying. And think of the last couple of years. Governors, politicians, businesses, entertainment venues, travel companies, trains, planes, automobiles. All of these entities did practice medicine without a license. And, there was no repercussion thereof. And so to, this great scenario and the what ifs, why would we allow those individuals to exert medical control over others?
Yeah.
But again, common sense, common courtesy, I think solves a lot of the problem.
I mean, when I look back at just anecdotally through life, I don't think I have very many examples. I mean, of course, it happens from time to time where somebody shows up on a plane and they're obviously sick, and you're like, oh, why didn't you just stay home, right? Or somebody comes to work and they're sick, and you're like, oh, you better not get me sick. I think we have that in our lives, but it's not the people coming around us trying to get us sick. I don't remember a time when somebody actively, well, except for when I was a kid and there was the chickenpox parties. But besides that, I don't remember a time where somebody actively was trying to get me sick. But it's interesting. So when we craft, I think, these types of bills, and when we kind of deal with these what ifs, I think it's what we did see, though, during the COVID pandemic was that the what if we don't have something protecting our medical autonomy? We could go back, let's say 50 years, and people say, well, we should have a bill that actually protects our medical autonomy. And people would say, oh, that's ridiculous. We don't need that. Nobody's going to ever do that to you. Well, and then the person says, well, what if they do? Oh, no, we can't live in the what ifs. But we did see that what if, right? We saw that they actually, en masse, completely controlled our lives, harmed us, ruined relationships, ruined careers, ruined businesses. I mean, they did that at a massive, massive scale. Whereas when I think about the what if somebody tries to get me sick, they want to show up. I mean, I don't, yes, there are just the people that are maybe they're trying to pay bills, and so they don't want to take the day off of work, but actively trying to get me sick, I don't see that happening, just rude people in society. So we need the protection, obviously, from the tyranny of the masses when they want to try to control us versus the individual who might just be a deranged person wanting to get people sick, which would rarely happen.
Yeah, and
I would hope.
That's a great point, because we have so much historical precedent, and we've tried to prevent this historically, whether it was Nuremberg or the Helsinki Convention, or even the medical codes of ethics that many professional organizations supposedly had and yet didn't apply. And so those tyrannical overreaches that we did see, this is what Leslie's great efforts in her bill have done, is to codify that we will protect people from this type of tyrannical intervention going forward.
Yeah, I think this is the greatest gift of COVID, frankly. Who would have ever imagined that we would be forced to wear masks, which have been acknowledged for over 100 years to not actually do anything? Who would have ever imagined that we were forced to stand on dots 6 feet apart in the grocery store, or talk to someone behind a piece of plexiglass as though the air didn't go around it? Who would have ever thought that a 16-year-old girl would be fired from a local business because she didn't want to take a shot for an illness that was no risk to her? Who would have thought that my friends would have been fired from the health club where they worked, that I couldn't go to the gym, you couldn't go to the Y or to Zenergy, or that my father would be escorted? 82-year-old father with a heart condition who couldn't wear a mask was escorted out of the local grocery store by someone saying, we don't care about your exemption. Mm-hmm. Who would have thought that any of this could have happened? But it did. And now that we see how far whoever it is who's pushing these policies are willing to go, this is the bulwark against that ever happening again. And this is why I hope and pray that Governor Little will do the right thing. He will support our rights. He will stand up for the people of Idaho, and he will show that he actually really supports this by signing it, not just letting it become law. Because if he doesn't, then every Idahoan needs to know that.
Yeah. Well, I love that you guys are still fighting this. A lot of people have moved on. They've forgotten about COVID, and this is the time when we need to actually reflect, now that we see 5 years later, the ramifications of what the pandemic actually did, because the science is out now on what it did to kids and their mentality, what it did to suicide rates, what it's done to, there's just so many other things that were not acknowledged during the pandemic. Many of us were screaming about it. No one would listen. And now 5 years later, a lot of people are saying, yeah, it was bad. We should never do it again. But this is the time then to enact the legislation to ensure that level of tyranny never happens again. right? I mean, this is when the fight happens. And it's so great to have people like yourselves fighting this and actually keeping this very much in the public eye and very much, pushing that forward, because we really can't have that happen again. I mean, we really just cannot. But I worry. I mean, I just Googled myself the other day, and I'm still labeled I'm still labeled for spreading misinformation, for saying the vaccine does not stop the spread. I mean, how? Okay,
The CDC said that in July of 2021. The CDC admitted that the shots don't stop transmission or spread.
well, I think everybody knows that now, but it's still right, because everybody still got COVID after they got 10 doses of the vaccine. But they still have labeled many of us. They've still, rather than just correcting and saying, actually, this person wasn't wrong this entire time and they shouldn't be labeled this terrible thing or lose their license or businesses or, all of the things that we dealt with during the pandemic. No one's correcting that. And that is a real shame that correction isn't happening. But what is great, though, is to see bills like this going forward. I hope that Governor Little signs it or ignores it, I guess, and it becomes law. I mean, however he wants to do it, whatever. But then I hope that other states follow suit. Maybe Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida will follow suit. Maybe other more, I would imagine, more Republican or freedom states would follow suit. I hope they do, because then otherwise everyone's flocking to Idaho and it's already getting crowded and the home prices are going up. So let's hope
we
this
have a plan.
spreads.
Let me just say that this, I hope and pray, and I do believe that Governor Little will sign it, or at least let it become law. That is my belief, and I don't think we would have gotten this far if it wasn't going to happen. I really don't. Number one, and number two, we're going to take this bill and we're going to create a model bill out of it, perfect it, and then I'm working with some organizations who are going to help take it to other states so that we can actually codify once and for all that each and every one of us has a liberty interest in refusing unwanted medical interventions, and that this is literally a foundational principle to this entire country. And it's just common sense. I can't believe that we even have to defend this or discuss it, but we do. And if we can't do it now, when will we ever be able to do it?
Yes. I thank you both so much for being here, and thank you so much for sharing this with us and for moving this forward, because it is absolutely necessary. So good luck. Where can people, I will keep people updated on this, but where can people go? Is it healthfreedomdefense.org? Is that where they should go in order to follow this along? Or and Dr. Cole, where can they go to potentially find out for sure if you're going to be running for governor, and where they can donate to your campaign? Give us all the details.
Well, again, like I said, I'm in a holding pattern, waiting to land the plane, but you can follow me on X at drcole, the number 12. And then you can link to some of my other things from there. But we will wait with bated breath and see what happens. And again, I hope he signs the bill. And we need humility in government to overcome what we've gone through. We need this society to cohesively come back together and be less divided. Yeah. And all those things they say about you, which I know are wrong, and say about me, which I know are wrong. That's what we need to rectify what's been done. And I'm just grateful that we can share this, and I'm exceedingly grateful for Leslie. And I want to also compliment those brave House and Senate members who've done the right thing. Yeah. And grateful to be an Idahoan, and it's just a wonderful step forward for freedom all around the country, setting the example as a state for others going forward. And again, if it weren't for the work of Leslie and her great organization, we wouldn't be where we are right now.
And I just want to say thank you so much to Senator Dan Foreman and to Representative Rob Beiswanger, because those guys really, they have made sure that this happened. They actually took some of their own legislation that they wanted to put forth this year and got the committees to the chairs to actually hear the bill in exchange for dismissing some of their other stuff. They really felt that this was so important that they sacrificed some of their pet projects, and they took, it shows tremendous courage on their side to do what they've done and to stand up and debate it and to carry this. And the time is right. And I'm so excited about that. And I'm just so unbelievably grateful to know those men and to know, Dr. Cole and you, Kim, and so appreciate you having us on to talk about this, because I really, truly believe that Idaho is going to be the shining light on the hill as an example for the rest of the country. And I hope everyone in the United States doesn't move here, but you know what? I'm willing to give up some of my privacy, some of my own private Idaho for a stronger Liberty Idaho. And so that's where I come down.
Thank you both so much. Best of luck, and let's hope that this gets through. And best of luck if you run for governor, Dr. Cole. That would be great. So thank you both again.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show, which has a new show time. Catch the full Kim Iversen Show, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Head to KimIversonShow.com. See you there.